The air inside the substation tastes of ozone and stale coffee, a faint hum from the war surplus transmitter vibrating through the concrete floor. Dust motes dance in the single neon tube's sickly green glow, illuminating hand-labeled vinyl sleeves stacked beside dead server racks. Outside, the city murmurs like a restless sleeper.
Black Star Pirate Radio.
Orangyazich checks in at 54 degrees and fog. Wind check, north-northwest at 5 miles an hour. Our signal holds steady, charting the currents of inner and outer architecture. Tonight, we consider the frameworks we build for ourselves and our collective spaces. We're looking at how self-worth manifests in community, how civic structures bend under pressure, and where dignity finds its ground. First up, a blueprint from the East. The tension, bridging cultural divides to find and build belonging in a foreign landscape, asserting unwavering autonomy through deep integration.
Concrete facts. U.S. author and artist Hannah Kirshner, known for her work on food, craft, and travel, has deeply embedded herself in Yamanaka Onsen, a traditional hot spring town in Ishikawa Prefecture, Japan. She actively contributes to the local economy and cultural preservation, documenting her experiences in her new book, Salad for Dinner, and working with local artisans. Who is affected? The local community of Yamanaka Onsen, including traditional artisans, small business owners, and elders maintaining ancient crafts, benefit from renewed interest and economic support. Simultaneously, Kirshner herself is transformed, moving from observer to participant, enriching her own inner architecture. A viable alternative would have been for Kirshner to remain an ethnographic observer, writing about Japan from a more detached perspective, maintaining a purely journalistic distance without active participation in community-building initiatives.
The cultural weave here extends beyond the onsen tradition to the broader Japanese concept of machizukuri, or community building, through shared effort and local initiative. It's a reciprocal relationship, not just an acquisition of culture. The image that crystallizes this is not just a foreign artist learning a craft, but a new hand joining the existing weave of the community, contributing new threads while honoring the ancient pattern. This fosters a resilient inner architecture for both parties by integrating the logic of practical revitalization with the emotion of genuine belonging and mutual respect.
Patching in a caller, the boundary keeper. You're on the signal. Eski.
This sounds idyllic, but what's the actual cost? Is this community building just a gentrifying force, pricing out long-term residents, or turning cultural practices into commodities for foreign consumption? Who financially carries this next, ensuring true provenance?
A reel-to-reel stutters somewhere in the back room, then finds its groove. The board glows amber. Copy that, bringing it back to the main thread.
The chosen next move, the playable step, involves focusing funding streams and project development directly into local co-ownership models and formal mentorship programs. For example, Kirshner's projects could formalize a majority local ownership stake, e.g. 51%, for all new community-focused initiatives, and establish reciprocal skill-sharing programs where local elders mentor new arrivals and vice versa. This moves beyond mere participation to structural provenance, ensuring economic benefits flow back to the community and cultural dignity is maintained and co-created rather than consumed. It asserts self-worth as structural for all involved.
Provenance as a structural vector, then, actively built with consent. From building bridges to feeling the strain on existing structures, our signal shifts focus now to civic pressures. The tension, escalating urban violence, meets calls for external, often militarized intervention, challenging the very definition of a resilient civic architecture.
Concrete facts. Over a single weekend in Chicago, at least 7 people were killed and dozens more wounded in various shootings across the city, including a 14-year-old boy. President Trump responded by renewing calls to deploy federal agents or the military, citing a need to fix the city, despite strong opposition from Mayor Lori Lightfoot, who emphasized local control. Who is exposed? Residents in neighborhoods like Inglewood, Austin, and Lawndale. already grappling with deep-seated socioeconomic challenges, face both the immediate threat of violence and the potential for a federalized, militarized response that often exacerbates community distrust. A viable alternative considered by many local leaders is a significant sustained investment in community-led violence interruption programs, like those pioneered by Cure Violence Global initiatives, which treat violence as a public health epidemic.
This echoes a familiar, disheartening cultural loop: the state's reflex to impose order through force, rather than addressing root causes like poverty, lack of opportunity, and systemic injustice. We've seen this play out from the National Guard deployments during the 1968 riots to more recent federal responses in cities like Portland, eroding the architecture of consent. The image that crystallizes this is the sight of non-local, uniformed personnel on city streets, a visual that often heightens rather than calms communal anxieties, further fracturing inner and civic trust. Who carries the burden next? The local police force, caught between federal mandates and community distrust, and the families directly impacted by both the violence and the proposed solutions that often feel like occupation.
Patching in a caller. Go ahead.
So, is the choice just between local failure and federal overreach? What about integrating logic and emotion here? How do you measure the success of a violence interruption program against a body count? Who funds the real long-term civic architecture for peace that favors dignity?
A targeted, consent-driven approach to civic healing, asserting that self-worth is structural even in conflict zones. Our final signal today points to the vulnerability of identity in public space. From that dossier to this one, taxi and Uber rider targeted in suspected anti-Muslim. The tension, targeted hate manifesting against individuals in public transit and spaces, directly challenging their autonomy and dignity.
Concrete facts. In Edinburgh, witnesses reported 2 separate suspected anti-Muslim attacks targeting a taxi and an Uber rider. One incident involved a woman in a hijab being verbally abused and having her vehicle egged. Another involved similar harassment against a passenger perceived to be Muslim. A 38-year-old white Scottish man has been charged in connection with these incidents, where 5 men were injured. These are not isolated incidents, but part of a documented rise in Islamophobia, with a 2023 report by the UK's Tell Mama organization showing a significant increase in anti-Muslim hate crimes. Who is exposed? The Muslim community in Edinburgh, particularly women who visibly express their faith, face direct threats to their safety, autonomy, and dignity in everyday transit. This erodes their freedom to simply exist in public spaces. A viable alternative response to these incidents beyond law enforcement is a comprehensive public awareness campaign promoting active bystander intervention and local interfaith solidarity initiatives, explicitly condemning hate speech and actions.
This cuts directly at the core of personal autonomy and the right to exist without fear in civic spaces, undermining the structural self-worth of individuals. The cultural signal here is ancient: the sacredness of personal space and the profound violation of it when identity becomes a target. The image is stark: a woman pulling her hijab tighter, not for modesty but for protection within her own city, or an individual choosing to avoid certain routes or times of day. This erosion of trust in public life generates toxic residue, impacting the inner architecture of individuals and the fabric of the community. Who carries it next? Local councils, community leaders from Edinburgh Central Mosque, and every citizen who chooses to challenge hate, turning a moment of confusion into a vector for clear analysis and collective action.
Callers on, go ahead.
But how do you stop this toxic residue from spreading? What concrete steps assert that self-worth is structural for everyone, not just those who fit a certain mold? Is it just more signs? Or do we need structural changes in how public spaces are managed to truly favor dignity?
The chosen next move is to integrate explicit anti-hate protocols and immediate support mechanisms into public transport apps and services across Edinburgh, embedding dignity structurally. This means a direct report hate incident button on Uber, taxi, and public transport apps, linking directly to a dedicated rapid response police unit with specific training in hate crime investigation and victim support. Furthermore, deploying Dignity Ambassadors, trained local volunteers and community workers on key public transport routes to offer immediate support, de-escalation, and ensure a visible presence of consent and safety. This builds a resilient inner and civic architecture that actively favors dignity for all citizens, making self-worth non-contingent on external validation.
Exactly. We're building frameworks that assert self-worth is structural, not contingent on external validation. It's about integrating logic and emotion, using clear analysis to turn confusion into actionable vectors for resilient civic architecture. The signal holds.
Black Star Pirate Radio.
Continue the signal at TogeeVision.com. Tune in, Sparks and Stories, Gig Passport.